just in time as always. Settle in, tuck that blanket up just so, and listen closely. Tonight's story is a slightly spooky one, but don't worry, I'll stay with you till the end. Tonight's tale is called The Rain-Soaked Letter. Grayport was a town perpetually drowned in drizzle. Fishermen spoke of never-ending mists rolling in from the sea, settling over the slate roofs like damp blankets. Lamps along the harbor glowed dim through curtains of rain, their beams trembling as though apologizing for intruding upon the darkness. At the edge of the quay stood the old lighthouse, whitewashed bricks spattered with salt and algae, its lantern room perched high above the waves, a solitary eye that seldom rested. Each night, the lamp's great wheel turned in a weary rhythm, casting arcs of trembling light across the storm-rippling water. Locals swore that no storm came without leaving a warning in its wake. A single letter, soaked through, left in the dead of night. Young Elias Ward, new keeper of the Grayport Lighthouse, learned this as his first lesson. He arrived just before autumn, trousers damp from the morning fog. The previous keeper had vanished. Some said carried off by the sea. Others whispered that he'd been driven mad by the endless rain. Elias carried with him only a battered satchel, a journal, and a sense of duty his mother had instilled. Wherever the lamp shines, let no soul wander if we can guide them. That first day on the job passed in routine checks. Polishing the glass, trimming the wick, logging the lamp's revolutions. But by dusk, as Elias climbed the narrow spiral stairs of the lamp room, thunder grumbled from beyond the horizon. The wind sharpened to a whine, rattling the windows like hollow bones. Elias secured the hatch and ignited the lamp, its glow haloing him in a pool of amber warmth. Yet even as he lit the wick, he felt a tug of unease, an itch beneath his collar, as if dozens of wet fingers brushed his neck. He shook it off, reminding himself of his promise. He studied the horizon through rain-spattered panes. Waves crested in gray fury, foam flinging itself at the rock lip below. A bolt of lightning crackled overhead, illuminating the tower's iron ribs in white fire. Somewhere down among the quayside taverns, bells tolled midnight, or at least he thought them so. But when Elias checked his pocket watch, the hand stood frozen at 12:03, dripping minute hand frozen above the numeral 3. He checked the wall clock. It read 12:17. A small alarm of panic fluttered in his chest. Had the power of the lamp warbled his sense of time? Yet he calmed himself, recalling townsfolk tales. Clocks might lie, but the lamp spoke true. He descended the stairs 2 at a time, leaping onto the quarry flagstones below. Rain chopped at his coat, pooling in his boots. He hurried toward the circular door, only to stop dead where the warm glow of lamplight should have been. In its place sat a single envelope, gleaming soggily amid the puddles. The paper was thick as though wax-pressed, its edges frayed by water. No address, no name, just his name scrawled in a child's looping hand. E. Ward. Elias knelt and picked it up. The envelope was soaked through. Embossed letters bloomed into ink-smeared petals. He slipped a finger in the flap, and a wet breath of cold air sighed from within. He straightened, heart hammering. Ooh! He carried the letter inside, gasping as the rain-soaked envelope dripped onto the wooden floorboards. The tavern bells choked mid-toll, silence pressing in. He stood beneath the lamp's warm eye, envelope sagging in his palm, and hesitated. Each second the lamp flickered. Shadows danced in time with the storm's rhythm, and the lonely sea whined through iron grates. Finally, Elias eased the flap open. The paper fell apart in his fingers, a single page clinging to the top fold. He smoothed it against his coat, blotting rivulets of ink and seawater. The words were half legible, bleeding into one another. They come with the rain. You watch them vanish. Now they watch you. The last line was barely visible. He strained to read it, but his breath misted the words into obscurity. A single word remained clear at the bottom, smeared but legible. Return. A thunderclap shook the tower, rattling glass and bone alike. Elias's breath caught. He pressed the letter to his chest, feeling its damp weight as though it had grown heavier than steel. The lamp above roared, its wick flaring bright. And for the first time in his life, Elias Ward doubted his mother's wisdom. Outside, the storm's roar deepened into a chorus of chaos. Elias looked at the lamp as though it might answer. but the glass shuddered with no words. He swallowed hard. The dripping page in his hand trembled. He folded it carefully, steeling himself. Whatever they were, she who wrote in that child hand, and knew his watch and his schedule, belonged to the storm. And now the storm had found him. Elias took a deep breath and walked to the small writing desk near the hatch. With shaking fingers, he produced a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. Outside, rain pummeled the tower's walls. He set to work. I have received your letter. I await your next words. Do not keep me waiting. His signature smudged in the damp. He folded the reply and tucked it inside the empty envelope. The moment he sealed the flap, the lamp's flame flickered once more, bright and reassuring. Elias straightened, voice barely more than a whisper. I will not keep you waiting. A hush fell over the tower. Then, as though satisfied, the storm slackened to a gentle hiss outside. The tavern bells resumed their toll. 1, 2, 3, 4, striking the hour at last. Elias exhaled, his heart pounding in erratic staccato. He placed the letter on the desk and turned to the lamp. I lit this lantern to guide others through dark, storm-tossed nights, he murmured. But I never meant to be guided myself. Outside, the drizzle fell more softly, and somewhere in the shifting mist, a pair of eyes watched, waiting. Elias Ward spent the daylight hours in a fog of unease. Though the storm had softened to a drizzle, his mind swirled with questions. At breakfast in the Lighthouse's cramped galley, he kept expecting a dripping envelope to tumble from the cupboard door. Instead, he found only the echo of wind rattling the panes. He resolved to learn more about the handwriting. After polishing the lamp and securing the lens, he changed into dry clothes and descended to town. Grayport streets gleamed like slick obsidian, puddles reflecting lamppost halos in trembling rings. The townsfolk moved quickly, hoods drawn, collars turned up, eyes darting at his lighthouse coat. Elias felt them watching him, though he could not tell whether it was curiosity or pity. At the Grayport Gazette office, he found Miss Henrietta Blythe, the clerk of records. She sat behind a high desk piled with ledger books and rain-softened petitions. Her spectacles perched precariously on her nose, her lips pressed in a thin line. Miss Blythe, Elias said, removing his cap, I wonder if I might examine old petitions, handwritten appeals, perhaps for patterns of handwriting. Henrietta's brow knit. You take timeliness as a trivial matter, Mr. Ward. But if the lighthouse lamp is safe, perhaps I may indulge you. She led him to musty shelves where bound volumes of letters lay neglected. The leather spines bore dates stretching back decades. Elias scanned entry for sudden disappearances during storms. He found cases labeled vanished, returned? No. Names followed by terse notations. 1 week later, found wandering wild at Brine Hollow. No trace. Letter received. Beneath those, a petition from Mary Ravenscroft, whose husband George had vanished in 1892. Elias flipped its pages. Her letter, careful script, beseeching, please, return me my love. I await you are... The handwriting matched the looping signature on his own envelope. A child's hand. The capital are curling like a wave. His heart hammered. Miss Blythe, he murmured. This is the same handwriting. She reached over, skimming the petition. Indeed, she said softly. I thought it odd. She, too, claimed the letter arrived after the worst storm. She closed the ledger, voice hushed. He did return. 2 days later, muddied and silent. He never spoke of it again. A cold shiver ran down Elias's spine. Storms, letters, vanished souls. This was no random prank. He had unleashed something older and crueler. He thanked Henrietta with as much calm as he could muster and hurried back through the dripping streets. That evening the rain returned in earnest, first in soft sighs, then an urgent drumbeat on the lantern room's metal roof. Elias climbed the spiral stairs with each step heavier than the last. Behind him, the lamp sat dark and quiet. Ahead, the lens awaited the wick's spark. He lit it and turned the great wheel, its familiar click of faint reassurance. Below, in the village, the sea heaved with a hungry roar. Elias looked through the glass to the churning horizon. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating the waves in brief white glare. In that flicker, He thought he saw a figure standing atop the cliffs, small, hunched, a girl in soak frock, hand outstretched toward the light. Elias gasped and blinked. The lightning faded. The cliffs were empty. His heart pounded. He descended the stairs again, driven by a sudden need to confirm or refute what he had seen. On the landing, he paused. The hallway lamp was unlit, and the shadows undulated against the walls as the tower swayed. He heard a faint whisper, a voice like wind through dry leaves. "Why have you come?" The words seemed to drift from the wet stone itself. Elias swallowed. "I did not know who you are," he called softly. No reply, only the whisper of rain beyond the walls. He pressed on to the watchroom below, where he kept a ledger of lamp rotations. On the desk lay his reply envelope, damp, as though someone had pressed it again under the door. He hesitated, then lifted it. The flap was torn open. Inside, a torn fragment of paper clung to the edge. "Follow me below." Chilled, Elias burned the scrap in the fireplace. The flame caught quickly, twisting the edges into charred curls. In the flickering shadows, he almost heard the girl sob, tender and broken. He sat stiffly until the scrap had curled into ashes. That night, sleep eluded him. He drifted in and out of dreams of running through floodlit corridors. Corridors lined with doors behind which faint lamplight glowed. And behind those doors, countless versions of the same letter, each soaked in begging. "Return to me at dawn." Elias resolved to confront the darkness more directly. He fetched the full petition file from Henrietta, letters from Sarah Thornton in 1904, Thomas Lee in 1911, Elizabeth Rowan in 1938, all featuring the same looping hand and the same dread that followed. Each victim had returned, or not, and each bore a story of trauma in the aftermath. That evening, as the wind rattled the windows, Elias donned a thick coat and hood, pocketing the journal of petition fragments. He climbed the lighthouse stairs for a final time, determined to find the source of the curse. On the topmost landing, the lamp's glow carved a circle of warmth. Beyond it, the lens was misted with raindrops that trickled in rivulets like fresh tears. Elias traced his finger across one droplet, no longer curious but resolute. He laid the petition book on the floor and leafed to Mary Ravenscroft's story. He read aloud. "He returned to me 1 week later. His eyes were empty, and he carried a note drenched in seawater, penned in my daughter's childish hand. A blank page followed, then a single line written in pencil. She waits." Elias tapped the page. "Where?" He paced the circular room, journal in hand, until he noticed a small trapdoor set into the plank floor. He hadn't seen it before, though he traversed these boards countless times. The hatch lay loose at one corner, the wood swollen by damp. His pulse spiked. Gathering courage, Elias snapped open the hatch. A metal ladder descended into pitch-black depths. The lamp's flame flickered as if in warning. He glanced at the shore below. Only a thin strip of water, but violent enough to drown a man. Swallowing hard, he hooked the lamp onto his belt and climbed down. Below the hatch was a narrow passage, walls slick with moisture. Each footstep echoed down the iron shaft. At the bottom, Elias found a door bound in rusted chains and padlocked with a single silver clasp bearing a symbol, the same looping that marked the envelopes. With trembling fingers, he produced the envelope from his pocket, its flap soaked but the paper itself intact where it bore the symbol. He slid the flap beneath the lock. The clasp clicked. The chains fell away. Elias hesitated, hand on the door. Behind it lay a small stone chamber. The air was cold, as though breathed last by a child who had just slipped into slumber. He raised a lamp and stepped inside. The room's single object sat on a rough-hewn table, a dripping, waterlogged backpack. Rain dripped from its frayed straps into pooled puddles on the stone floor. Elias opened the pack. Inside lay a torn nightdress, embroidered with daisies, and a single yellow photograph of a smiling child. Blonde curls, eyes the color of storm clouds. He lifted it, and the photograph surface peeled away to reveal a hidden message. "Thank you for coming. I've been so alone." The floor shuddered. A soft, wet sob came from the far corner. Elias's breath caught. He turned toward the sound, stepping gingerly, lamp held high. In the dim glow, a small figure crouched against the wall. a girl in a tattered dress. Her hair wet and matted, skin chalk white. Her eyes shone with tear reflection as she looked up at him. "You came," she whispered. "Will you stay with me?" Elias's heart pounded. I want to help you." His voice cracked. "Who are you?" She rose, dripping water. "I am Rose. I used to live here before the storm took me." The room spun in his chest. "Take you? But you're here now." Rose's lips curved in a sad smile. "I never left. I write the letters so someone sees me, but I get so cold." Elias swallowed. The rain-soaked letter's horror became clear. This was no prank, no omen, but a child's desperate plea from beyond the grave. The letters had been her voice, calling to him through time. He knelt before her, heart aching. "Please, Rose, I will stay." As he spoke, the chamber's damp stones seemed to exhale. The lamp's flame steadied, its warmth banishing the chill. Rose's shoulders relaxed, eyes brightening with a fleeting joy. But then the sobs resumed, soft, echoing. Rose stepped backward. Hands pressed her ears. "They're coming," she wailed. "I can't hide." Elias rose, urgent. "Hide? Who?" A low, guttural moan filled the chamber, the sound of water filling a void. Shadows stretched long on the walls as the lamp flickered wildly. Elias gripped Rose's hand. "We must go. Now!" He led her to the hatched ladder, mounting quickly. Rose's small hand in his felt icy. Outside, the rain was a wall of needles. He hauled her into the lamp room and closed the hatch. Behind him, the scratching moans of water against stone faded. Elias set Rose gently on the floor. Her blue eyes glistened as lightning split the sky. He knelt. "You're safe now. I'll help you go home." Rose's lips trembled. "But I never want to go alone." Elias drew her into a careful embrace, feeling her small weight tingle like frost. "Then I'll stay with you until you find your way." A sudden hush fell. In that quiet, Elias sensed a shift, as though the world outside paused to take a breath. The rain's patter softened to a lullaby. Rose rested her head on his chest, sobs stilled, breath easing. Elias looked up through the lamp room's glass. The storm had broken. Beyond the raindrops, stars glimmered faintly. In the distance, the town's clocks chimed once more, their timekeeper's secret pulsing in perfect sequence. He rose, pulling Rose gently to her feet. "Let's find what you need," he whispered, "and then I'll set you free." Outside, the rain-soaked letter lay on the desk, waiting for the next chapter to be written. Elias Ward guided the pale child, Rose, down the Lighthouse's spiral stairs. Each step clanged hollowly, echoing like distant footsteps in tune. Rose's small hand gripped Elias's, her damp fingers trembling. In the lamplight, her eyes reflected both fear and hope. At the workbench below, Elias retrieved his satchel, pulling forth the ledger of petitions and the fragmentary diary entries from the town archives. He spread them out. Mary Ravenscroft's petition, Henrietta Blythe's clerk notes, and a single yellowed page torn from the asylum's records. That page, found among asylum inventories, bore entries from children's Ward C, detailing nights spent listening to waves and promises to be found. Rose knelt beside him, knees creaking like ancient boards. Elias set a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We need to know where you came from. Then I can help you go home." Rose's lip trembled. "You must visit the asylum. It's the only place that remembers me." Elias nodded grimly. The Greyport Asylum, abandoned decades ago, stood on the cliffs beyond the quay. Its blackened windows stared blindly at the sea, its gate chained but rusted through. Locals avoided it, claiming the wind carried children's laughter even on windless days, and lamps flickered in empty ward wings under moonlight. He packed a ledger and the diary page into his satchel, replaced the petitions, and hoisted Rose into his arms. She curled against his chest, heavy with sorrow, but slept fitfully as Elias carried her past the lantern's light into the storm's lingering drizzle. The streets of Greyport were deserted. The tide had risen, flooding the quay into shallow lagoons that lapped at raised sidewalks. Elias stepped carefully, water sluicing around his boots. Every so often, he glanced upward to ensure Rose's head cleared the stair rails above. She clutched her damp frock, eyes closed, lashes wet. They reached the asylum gates. The iron bars were ornate, once painted white, now flaky with rust and salt. A single padlock hung, its shackle cracked. Elias slid the rusted key he borrowed from Henrietta's records collection into the lock. It turned with a stiff groan. The chain fell away. Elias lifted Rose down. Together, they stepped into the asylum's grounds. The wind sighed through broken windows, carrying the faintest echo of children's song, notes half caught by the sea breeze, as though drifting from a distant playground. He held the lamp high. The ash bits and hedgerows were overgrown. Ivy strangled clapboard walls. A torn banner proclaimed Children's Ward C, its letters ghostly on ragged cloth. Elias swallowed, heart pounding. He pressed Rose gently forward, through the entrance into the asylum's dark belly. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and dust. The entry vestibule's tile floor was cracked, blackened with mold. Moonlight filtered through a gaping skylight, casting a sallow glow. Elias set the lamp on an overturned chair and encouraged Rose to walk. They found Ward C down a narrow corridor. Doors hung ajar, hinges fallen. Faded murals of smiling children, painted by staff or patients, peered across peeling wallpaper. The windows were barred, glass broken, letting in a wind thick with salt and emptiness. At the ward center lay rows of small cots, their springs bent, mattresses rotted. In one bed lay a tattered teddy bear, its fur matted and eyes dull. Elias picked it up. It soaked against his coat, stuffed with straw. He found a string tied around its neck, holding a torn scrap. "You said you'd wait." He glanced at Rose. She stared at the bear, tears glinting. "They stayed here," she whispered. We wrote letters." Elias pocketed the note. He ventured deeper into the ward, lamp casting jittering shadows that grew and shrank along the walls. He passed a low table scattered with shards of crockery and bits of colored chalk. A child's handprint in faded red smeared on the plaster. Underneath, a scrawled verse. "Rain can't wash away our longing." A cold gust rattled the barred window. Rose shivered. Elias reached down, taking her hand again. "I'm here," he murmured. At the far end of the ward, a wooden door led to the treatment rooms. Elias turned the knob. It gave with crack. Inside lay metal gurneys and overturned instruments. A ledger lay on an exam table, its cover waterlogged but legible. Patient records, Ward C. He flipped through dozens of entries for children admitted after storms. Cases of fever, of melancholy, of disappearance. Each child's name was crossed out beneath the date of discharge, yet blank columns for next of kin remained unfilled. At the ledger's end, one final name. Rose Garrick, admitted in 1923. Discharged, unknown. Outcome, variable. Elias felt a stone drop in his stomach. Rose Garrick. She was not a ghost among many. She was a child who had vanished from this very asylum, her name unwiped by time's tide. He closed the ledger. Steps echoed behind him. He whirled. The lamp circle fell upon the corridor once more, yet it was empty. The lamplight dimmed for a heartbeat, as though threatened. Elias steadied himself, exhaling. He led Rose back into the ward, closing the door firmly. At the nurse's station, he found a metal cabinet mounted on the wall. It was locked. Its glass was frosted with age. He pried it open with a screwdriver from a satchel. Inside lay scraps of paper, faded photographs, and a torn diary. The diary's cover read, Rose's journal. The R matching every other letter he'd found. Elias opened it carefully. The pages were waterlogged but legible. "I drew pictures of me and father by the sea. He said the lighthouse would keep me safe. Nurse says the rain is sad, so I wrote letters to make it happy. It's cold here. I miss the lamp's light." He flipped several pages. The water had obliterated most entries until the final, tear-stained page. "I waited by the window every night for father's light. When the storm came, I fell asleep and woke up alone. I wrote letters to him, but the rain washed them away. Please, tell him I'm here." Tears blurred Elias's vision. He realized the child had written letters to her father, the previous keeper, begging for help. The letters that washed away could only be found in spectral form, arriving at each keeper's door in their own soaked envelope. Now the lamp's new keeper had answered, and had ventured into the asylum to find her. Behind him, a soft sob drifted. Rose stood by the door, head bowed. Elias set the diary on a splintered desk and knelt. "Rose," he said gently, "we found you. I know what happened." She lifted red-rimmed eyes. I thought no one remembered." "I remember," Elias whispered. "I remember you, and I'll stay until you're free." Rose's shoulders shook. "How?" Elias considered the diary's last plea. "You need to speak one last letter, one the rain cannot wash away." He thought of the shelter of the lamp circle, of the warmth of words offered in kindness. "We'll write your letter together. But first, we need pen, paper, water that's not the storm." He strode back to the ward entrance, calling softly. "I'll find them." Rose followed. Steps light where before they had been leaden. In the hallway, he found an emergency kit left by staff. A dry ink pot, sheets of vellum, and an old quill. He gathered them, returning to the desk. Rose watched him set up, eyes wide. Elias inked the quill. "What did you want to say to your father?" he asked. "Tell me, and we'll write it here." Rose closed her eyes. Tears fell on her cheeks. I want to say I forgive him. I'm not angry. I just want to go home." Elias nodded. "Then let's write it." He wrote in careful, looping letters. "Father, I waited for your light to guide me home. The rain washed my words, but my heart remains. I forgive you for leaving me here. Please forgive yourself. I love you, always, Rose." As he penned her signature, Rose's name, the ink glowed faintly before settling into the page. The lamp's flame brightened, its warmth expanding. The walls trembled softly. The wind outside hushed. Elias placed the diary page into Rose's trembling hand. Rose held the page to her chest, breathing in its faint scent of ink and hope. The air in the room grew warmer, lighter, like sunlight filtering through clouds. Elias watched as a gentle glow enveloped her, the lamp's warmth embracing her form. The floorboard beneath them shifted. The door rattled as if in applause. Elias felt tears prick his own eyes. He reached out, brushing wet hair from Rose's forehead. "It's done," he whispered, and in the hush that followed, the spectral sob ceased. The ghost children's laughter faded into memory. The air stilled, the lamp's glow mellowed. The asylum's darkness no longer clung to them. Elias Rose's tears ran free, cleansing at last the sorrow etched upon her face. She looked at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. He smiled heartful and whispered, "Let's take you home." Together, they climbed the spiral stairs out of the asylum, leaving behind the ward where Rose had waited for decades. As they stepped into the hush of early night, Elias felt the burden of the letter's curse lift like mist at dawn. And though the rain still dripped from eaves above, its tone was gentle, no longer a drum of terror, but a lullaby of release. Elias Ward and Rose Garrick emerged from the abandoned asylum into a night softened by rain's end. The sea, once a furious roar, now murmured in gentle swells against the cliffs. Rose's small hand pressed Elias's, her violet eyes reflecting the lighthouse lamp's distant glow. He carried her back to the tower door, where the warm beam cut a path through the mist like a coaxing finger. Inside, the spiral stairs seemed shorter, less daunting. Rose nestled against Elias's chest as they climbed. The lamp room waited at the summit, its warmth radiating from the great glass globe. Elias reached up, extinguishing the lamp's flame, and replaced it with a brass lantern that he carried for emergencies. The soft yellow glow filled the room, casting undulating shadows over nautical charts and compass roses painted on wooden walls. Rose's small voice trembled. "I feel her here now." Elias nodded, understanding. The storm child spirit, freed from the asylum's confines, still lingered, now returned to claim the final ritual needed to cross beyond mortal binds. He closed the hatch behind them, sealing out the echo of gull cries. On a low table lay the rain-soaked letter from the first storm and the petition ledger. Elias retrieved both. Rose pointed to the letter. She wants me to reply." Elias opened the soggy envelope. The first message, written in a child's hand, had warned, "They come with the rain, You watch them vanish. Now they watch you, he swallowed. We must finish this. Lightning flickered beyond the panes. Long shadows stretched across the lamp room as rain began anew, gentle at first, then insistent. Elias set the petition ledger on a barrel. Each entry held a name, a date, an outcome. Mary Ravenscroft's husband returning. Thomas Lee's wife found asleep in a fisherman's net. Elizabeth Rowan's niece discovered wandering crops near dawn. Each soul touched by Rose's letters needed one last word of comfort to go free. Elias knelt pen in hand and began, "To those who vanish in storm's embrace, know now that Rose's love binds time anew. You are forgiven and you may rest." He signed each page, then folded them into the letter's folds like nested dolls. As he wrote, the rain lashed the windows, each droplet sounding like distant footsteps. Rose stood before the lantern's glow. The light brightened as Elias sealed the letter. She reached for it, lips parting in hesitant resolve. I want to say goodbye." She began to speak, voice airy and remote. "To my friends who waited in the rain, I am so sorry you were left behind. I wish I could have held your hands. Please know I loved you. Now please be free." Her words drifted through the lamp room like cold wind. Each syllable carried a weight lifted from ghostly shoulders. Elias watched his shadows along the walls slowed, then faded. The air grew still, inviting. Then the lantern's flame sputtered and died, plunging him into wavering darkness. Elias struck a match. Its glow revealed Rose's form dissolving into a scintillant mist. A soft cry echoed, half hope, half farewell. Elias's heart clenched. Rain hammered the glass above. He turned the match over to relight the lantern, but froze. On the desk lay the final petition. Last entry blank, no name recorded. A low moan rose from the lantern room's corner. Elias held Rose's page aloft. Where the petition lay, an imprint formed, smudged handwriting appearing as though drawn by unseen fingers. "Thank you. I waited so long." The lantern room shadows parted in the match's glow, revealing a small figure, now whole, Rose Garrick in spectral form. Her soaked dress shone ghostly white, hair curled with sea spray. She stepped forward, voice echoing, "Will you help me cross?" Elias's throat tightened as tears blurred his vision. "Yes." He held up the petition and the rain-soaked letter. "Your words will guide you." Lightning cracked, and the room brightened for an instant. In that flash, Elias saw dozens of tiny forms, ghostly children, standing behind Rose, their faces turned upward, hands clasped in silent prayer. The spectral children of the asylum, drawn by her call, sought release. Rose nodded at Elias. "Speak my final promise." He lifted the letter and read aloud. "By lamp's light and by love's embrace, I free you now to find your place and leave behind this storm-soaked space." As his voice carried the last line, the spectral form shivered. Each child blinked, smiled, and faded upward in motes of silver light, drifting through the ceiling's open lantern hatch as though embarking on a starry voyage. Rose stood alone in the circle of lamplight. She touched the petition gently. "Now my turn." She smiled, a ghostly beam of moonlight. "May the sea be calm, and may I rest." Her form glowed brightly, and then her image swelled into nothingness, leaving only the lingering specter of her laughter in the patter of rain. Elias exhaled. The lantern's flame steadied and the lamp above relit itself in a gentle burst of light. The room fell silent save for the steady drip of water from the lens above. He folded the letters and petitions, breathing deeply. With steady hands, he placed them in a weather-tight chest used for lighthouse logs. He locked it, sealing the fate of every soul set free. Elias paused beneath the lamp's warm glow, heart pounding. He looked out to the rain-streaked window. The sea's fury had calmed to a gentle chant. The lighthouse's arc cut a pure, steady beam across the mist. He whispered, "Rest now, Rose, and all who wait." Outside, the sound of rain softened to a lullaby, and somewhere among the cliffs or the distant orphan's laughter, he heard a final sigh of peace. Elias Ward remained in the lamp room long after Rose's final echo faded into the steady hiss of gentle rain. Dawn's pale light crept around the tower's walls, brushing the great lens in muted silver. He stood beneath the newly relit lamp, the brass lantern still warm at his side, and watched as each droplet on the window pane held a world of mist and promise. He set the lantern on the desk and unsealed the small chest of records. Inside lay the rain-soaked letter, the petitions, and the torn diary pages, all that had summoned him into the asylum's depths and released its captive child. Elias took the letter first, turning it in his hands. The paper, once drenched to sodden ruin, now lay flat and dry. Its strange loops of ink faded to pale gray. He placed it on the windowsill. Sunbeams, weak but certain, touched the page, and the ink dissolved into fine dust, drifting away on a gentle breeze. Elias closed his eyes as the last particle vanished, proof that Rose and her lost companions had at last found rest beyond the storm. He retrieved the petition ledger and burned each page in the lamp's flame until nothing remained but ash. With each petition consumed, he whispered the freed name: Mary Ravenscroft, George Ravenscroft, Thomas Lee, Elizabeth Rowan, until the ledger's spine lay open and empty. When the ashes cooled, Elias swept them into a small iron box and returned it to the chest. He lined the empty chamber with dry parchment, intending to preserve only his own account of these events. A soft tap echoed against the metal door. Elias turned to find Miss Henrietta Blythe standing in the doorway, her spectacles perched on her nose and a curious kindness in her gaze. "Mr. Ward," she said, voice gentle. The townsfolk spoke of lights guiding them through this morning's mist. They heard the bells ring true again. Elias nodded, eyes on the now empty chest. They needed guidance, and they will not need these petitions again. He closed the chest and locked it, tucking the key beneath his tunic. "Thank you, Miss Blythe, for trusting me with these records." She offered him a reluctant smile. "I only did my duty, but I confess, learning their fates, it was a relief to know they were remembered." Elias inclined his head. "Memory is the greatest lantern of all." Henrietta blinked at him, as though perplexed by his sudden poetry. Then she turned and left him to his solitude, her footsteps echoing like soft punctuation. Alone again, Elias walked to the lamp's railing and peered to the fog-veiled glass at the calm sea. No child on the cliffs, no ghostly silhouette. Only the water's gray expanse and the slow roll of waves. He exhaled, a breath he did not know he held, and allowed himself a moment of simple wonder. He returned to the desk and took up his journal, a leather-bound volume that had collected each daily log since his arrival. The spine creaked as he opened to a blank section marked Keeper's Reflections. By lamplight, he wrote. October 27th, pre-dawn. Found a rain-soaked letter. October 27th, midnight. Answered Rose's call and freed her from asylum's haunt. October 28th, dawn. Witnessed the last petition dissolve. The lost children are at rest. I have learned that lanterns both guide and guard. Letters can bind and unbind. May this record serve future keepers well. He closed the journal and set it on a high shelf beside the asylum chest. The lamp's flame flickered in agreement, steadying to a serene pulse. For the next hour, Elias performed his routine with quiet precision, cleaning the lens, checking the wick, trimming the wick's char with careful snips. Each motion felt like a prayer, an offering of care for both lamp and soul. He found solace in the ticking of clockwork, the measured click of the lamp's turntable, and the steady glow that now would never falter. Down below, Grayport roused itself to a world restored. The harbor bustled with fishermen hauling nets unmarred by the storm's wrath. The baker delivered fresh loaves under bright skies, and the tavern keeper stoked hearth fires for the morning crowd. Children splashed in puddles, their laughter ringing as true as church bells. Elias imagined their joy rising to the tower, a blessing for his night's work. When the lamplight's duty ended at the first blush of sunrise, Elias descended the spiral stairs and stepped into a golden morning. He climbed into a small rowboat tied at the jetty end, under the lamp's dim afterglow, set a single lantern afloat before him, with oars gliding silently. He traced the beam's path out across the harbor to where the first fishing skiffs bobbed and tied. He watched the light dance on ripples until, carried by the current, it drifted away, symbolic of Rose's own final journey. Back on solid ground, he returned to the workshop attached to the Lighthouse's base. There he placed a freshly bound journal and chest under glass locks. Then he sat at a scarred wooden table and built a small wooden box, inlaid with a single hourglass rune, a tribute to the children's fleeting time. Inside, he placed a slip of vellum on which he had written, "To any soul who finds this, know that the rain may call your name, but you are not alone. Let the lamp's light guide you. Release your burden and pass on the gift of memory." He sealed the box with beeswax and placed it alongside Crow's asylum chest and the records vault. In that quiet repository lay not only ledgers and diaries, but the shared promise that no plea would ever go unanswered, and that letters once soaked in sorrow could be transformed by the warmth of remembrance. As the morning sun climbed higher, Elias climbed the stairs to the lamp room one last time that day. He lit the great lamp, its prisms scattering prisms of light across walls and floor. In that radiant glow, he felt full, no longer haunted by dripping letters or ghostly cries, but content in the knowledge that he had kept his promise, to guide, to guard, and to remember. He looked out across the serene sea, breathing in salt and sunshine. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Rose Garrick and the asylum's lost children wandered free, carried on the tide of memory that the Lighthouse and its keeper would forever preserve. That's the end of tonight's tale. I hope it gave you a little chill and a lot of calm. With any luck, you're already sound asleep. Didn't even hear the ending, did you? But if you're still awake, well, how about another? Sleep well, dream better, and I'll see you next time.